We're going to start now because we'll have a few latecomers coming in. I know people are coming in, but we do like to get started for this luncheon series on time because we know you guys are taking time away from your lunch and want to get back to wherever. And by the way, you can feel free to bring a sandwich in here too if you're coming to the next one, which is Masaro's Kanjiwoto next. This is actually the second in the series we're doing on journalism in the age of fake news. If you were here last week, you heard Professor Kinghua Fu from our staff, just back from MIT, who talked about basically this explosion of fake news. He was there in the U.S. during the U.S. election. He learned, really put together a program that showed how you can spot all of these kind of fake news stories that were appearing, these fake ads. Please come on in. These fake ads that were appearing on Facebook and social media that really kind of tipped the U.S. election. We see that coming to a head now where Facebook has agreed to turn over thousands of these ads that were blocked by Russians during the campaign. So we learned a lot about how to spot these kind of fake news ads before, about the proliferation of these fake news ads. This week we're going to take it one step further now. You know that this fake news is all floating around and sloshing around out there, but now how are you going to check it? How are you going to find out how to counteract it? And I can't think of anybody better to talk about that than our own Ann Kruger from our staff. Ann's had a really busy year or so. She's completing her PhD. She just moved to become an associate professor of practice on our staff. Assistant professor of practice on our staff. She's teaching, but she's also become our ambassador to Google and Facebook and pretty much every international conference that's been going on around the region and the world dealing with this topic of fake news. So I actually never get to see Ann very much because every time I look up, she's either in Singapore, Indonesia, Vietnam, the States, or somewhere because this has become such a hot topic. And so I think we should all kind of figure out how we deal with fake news. Oh, she's also a winner of a teaching development grant because of her Cyber News Verification Lab, which actually is helping students do a deep dive into these kind of fake news projects. So I'm sure she's going to tell us all about that. Come on in, grab a seat. I'm going to sit down so we can get started because we like to keep right on time here. And I'll turn it over to Assistant Professor of Practice Ann Kruger.
Thank you. Thank you. See if this works. All right, well, thank you very much for coming, and thank you, Keith, for those very kind words. I feel very humble. It's very much a team effort, I have to say. I've got a lot of colleagues, and I've got teaching assistants, research assistants. They're hiding up the back because they don't like to be in the public eye, but absolutely couldn't do any of this without them, and in particular without the students. I want to tell you a lot about what the students have been doing. There's some really exciting work that they've been involved with. Let's see if this is going to work. Nope. Okay. So we set up the Cyber News Verification Lab a year ago, and really this was inspired by the students from Occupy Central. We were really busy during Occupy Central, but the students were even busier because they set up a Facebook site. I don't know if you're familiar with Live Verified. It got over 100,000 likes within the first, I think, 2 days because the students were going out and they were looking at the rumours that were coming on social media, particularly on WhatsApp, on Facebook, and a lot of these rumours were quite frightening for them. And so the students set up this Facebook site to debunk the rumours. And it was quite an organic type of a thing. And Jeffrey Timmermans, our director of the Bachelor of Journalism program, said to the students, well, you can decide to be a protester, that's absolutely up to you, or you can be a journalist, a student journalist reporting on this. But you can't really do both. You've got to think ethically, what are you doing here? And so the students basically set up this newsroom just next door, and they worked around the clock. We set it up like a newsroom. I was a little bit worried about the workplace health and safety side of things with students going out, so they went out in teams, they had their mobile phones, and it was a combination of looking up what was happening on social media and then going and doing the good old-fashioned journalism, you know, the footwork, and actually seeing for yourself, well, you know, are there really tanks coming through the tunnel from Tsim Sha Tsui? Is it the next Tiananmen Square, like all these rumours that we're hearing? So you can imagine we had a lot, and we have lectures full of examples of rumours and things that we've debunked during that time. So we didn't want to lose the momentum, basically, from that. The students learnt so much. It was this wonderful experiential project that, as I said, was very organic, and the students really ran it, and we kind of just, you know, had the umbrella, sorry for using the term, editorial role. So we thought, what can we do? So we set up the Cyber News Verification Lab, and thankfully we got some funding through the university, and we were able to collaborate with a company called Medan, and they broadly come under the Google News Lab as well. But Medan are a group of technologists, and they develop open source platforms so that people can basically form teams and can help to debunk social media and information that's coming on social media together as a team. And the idea is very much you're looking at, you're sourcing information from the public, and you are showing all of the steps, all of the verification steps that a journalist goes through, and you're putting everything together into a final story eventually. But I think as journalists, we often take for granted the amount of work that we do to verify and to fact check a story. So the idea of, and I'll show you later the platform, the software, the idea of this is to get the students involved and to basically annotate and see all the different steps that they have to take, and to really think about what needs to be done when you're debunking information on social media. So I talk about this last year's Summer of Samsung with the students. So, and I tell the students, whenever there's an issue, an event, it's prime, you know, it's a prime target, it's prime material for fake news. So at the moment, what are some big things that are going on? You could think, well, what's happening with North Korea, of course Myanmar. These are the big stories that are in the media. These are the stories that I tell the students, you know, people will get on the bandwagon and they'll create stories about that. Why are they creating stories about that? A couple of reasons. They might have a political agenda, they might just want to make money, or they might just be up to no good. So we have to start thinking about that. So a year ago, do you remember hearing about the Samsung Galaxy Note 7 mobile phones? Okay. Now, right at the start of that, now Samsung took a little bit of time to verify what was happening, and to, you know, I guess their PR machine took a little while to get going there. But at the start, the students were noticing things on YouTube related to Samsung and Samsung products. And this was one example that did the rounds of Facebook and Weibo and also Twitter as well. And one of my students found this on our platform. So basically, you know, there's a factory that's caught fire in mainland China. It's a Samsung factory, and it's because all of the mobile phones have exploded. You know, I'm really worried. Some of them said, you know, I'm worried my family are in this factory in mainland China. So then we thought, okay, well, let's have a little bit of a closer look. Well, the students had a little bit of a closer look at it. And remember, we don't know yet what was going on. We didn't know that there was a problem with some of the batteries. We just knew there was this rumour, okay? So the students took a closer look and did a couple of things to take a closer look. One was a reverse image search on Google, which is a fairly simple thing, simple technique. Once you know how to do that, it can help your verification daily. And also just observation skills, you know. Look at, I mean, this is a bit of a close-up. Look at the people. Do they look like they might be in mainland China? Look at the buildings. Look at what's happening. But a reverse image search came up, and a couple of searches on social media came up that yes, there was a factory fire in a Samsung building, but it was 6 months earlier, and it was in Nigeria, actually. So it wasn't on mainland China. So this is what I mean, is when I tell the students that people get on the bandwagon and they create this fake news. And we looked in and we got to some of the original reports. We actually found some of the news reports on Twitter that reported this fire. So we were able to verify that that actually happened, but was completely taken out of context. Okay. So that was pretty much just a fake news. Then we have issues with clickbait. This was quite a sinister one. Now remember I'm saying, you know, they get on the bandwagon, what's topical at the time. Well, the other thing that was happening at the time was the South Korean president was in a little bit of strife. I'm sure you've heard some of the controversies that were happening there. But she hadn't quite resigned yet. It was imminent, and I think when this came out, it was still probably a month later before she was impeached. But this was something actually I found in my news feed, and I asked the students about it, and I actually use this as an example for them to think about things. So have a look at CNN Alive. Have a look at the URL. It kind of looks maybe at first that it's CNN, but it's not. Look closely and it's CNN Alive. Click on the profile and it led to absolutely nothing, really. Sometimes there's a grain of truth sometimes, but this had nothing. And this was a double whammy because if you clicked in and went too far into the story, it had a virus on it that it left on your computer as well. So particularly nasty. But we sort of stalk the profiles quite a lot of who's sending things, and you get to know the people quite well. They're not nice people, okay? They don't associate with nice people. So it's building this critical thinking for the students, you know, what's happening. So I've developed this research argument, if you like, that we live in a society basically where we're all in the digital age. So not all of you are journalists here, and not all of you are perhaps wanting to be journalists, but you're all a part of this digital age. And I think the journalism education that we're giving our students here is applicable to basically everyone who is a digital citizen. If you have a mobile phone, if you're on your computer, you're a digital citizen if you have anything to do with social media. So my argument is that everyone needs at least some sort of awareness of verification skills. And at first it might be a little bit hard to, it's a little bit cognitive, you've got to think about what you're doing. But the idea is that once you've experienced this, it becomes automatic, okay? Or you at least will delay sharing some news, or you'll delay making a decision about the information that you're getting, okay? So, a little bit of the heavier research side of things. As Keith mentioned, I'm doing a PhD, so we've steeped this very much in some research methods, and we've incorporated the Cyber News Verification Lab as an experiential project into the foundation courses here at the JMSC. So I really believe, and well, we believe that as students are being taught how to write, even when they're doing their first reporting writing classes, we're teaching them how to get sources for a story. We're teaching them how to fact check. So now we have to teach them how to use social media with that as well. So it's actually a natural extension using technology and basically updating the curriculum. Now, also, just as part of the research side of things, I thought I'll interview some experts who are actually working in journalism now. So I'll interview editorial managers and reporters, and I'll ask them, right, what do you do day to day? How do you debunk? How do you verify all the news that you see on social media feeds? What are you doing? And it was really interesting because I actually found that the more I was interviewing them, the more they were actually interviewing me and wanting to know, what else can we do? What are your students doing? Because the students, they're the ones, they're the digital natives. They're not afraid of this. They just need to know a little bit, some of the critical thinking side of things and things to look out for, some of the motivations. But the students are actually the ones that, I guess the older generation, my generation and above, are actually wanting their skills in using, what is the latest, What are we looking at now? Telegram, Twitter, Line, even Snapchat, that sort of thing. How does it work? How does news spread? How does it circulate? What's going viral? How can you spot something that's about to go viral? So that was a little bit of a surprise there, I guess, in my research. And really the only, I guess, experts that I actually learnt something from were the technologists. There are, as a part of the Medan network, there's a company called First Draft News, and they specifically look at verification of social media, and they do it in an ethical way, and they're very much involved with eyewitness media. So when people are sending things on Twitter, how journalists will use that, how they'll decide whether or not what this person is sending on Twitter is something to follow up, or whether or not it's something that I guess is fake. And those are the companies that really that I ended up getting some more information from. So we used a control group where basically we had one group that were using the open source platform, the software, and then we had half the class that weren't using it, and they were using our normal, well, we call it Moodle here. That's our computer system here for learning. We put all our education materials on there, and we just wanted to see if there were any differences and things. So I'll show you some of the outcomes later. And basically I've got 3 semesters worth of research. First up, we beta tested. We were still beta testing the software that Medan were producing, and the results and the feedback from the students with using this software was actually quite valuable, because this platform has been used in some quite, well, global and famous cases now. We've got Election Land in the US. They use the same software for the polling day for the US elections, and they were specifically looking at voter intimidation and rumours about that. And then more recently, it was used for a project called Crosscheck that was checking the French elections. Agence France Presse were the ones that were basically leading that. So the feedback from our students directly helped to develop these platforms that have been used for fact-checking, major events, and particularly with a focus on elections. And I think the same thing's just been used for the German elections as well. So I thought, okay, that's fine. And we had our Samsung summers and things like that. So I thought, well, let's focus here in Hong Kong, our elections. Let's get to work and put the students, focusing on what's happening here. And people sort of said to me, like, they said, oh, Anne, the Hong Kong elections actually said to me, they're not particularly sexy. Why are you, following that? And I thought, well, let's just wait. Let's just wait. We might get nothing. We might get 1 or 2 things, but let's just wait and see. You just don't know if you don't try it, and we'll apply things. And one thing we found with Occupy Central is very much there are local nuances that we thought were missed sometimes in international media when you look at what's actually happening in the local press. So I thought maybe there'll be something like that. I'll show you what happened in a minute. And then we're kind of in the 3rd semester of it now, where we're conducting some of the final experiments and just making sure that it's fairly rigorous what we've got. So let's have a look. What did we find? Let's go over that. So this is the actual software. Okay, so this is the interface, and it's actually been upgraded again. They're always updating it. But this is the landing page, I guess, for the students. And I set up these columns here with the projects. And so this is the end of the semester now. So it was week by week, or we would see what topics, what other things were happening in Hong Kong at the time. You might recall that a particular former politician was sent to jail. So we had Donald Tsang's court case. There were some interesting things there. The students very quickly debunked. They were as quick as Hong Kong Free Press to debunk some of the stories when Donald Tsang was first sent to prison, and then there was a rumour that he'd committed suicide. My students were right onto that, and we actually had Hong Kong Free Press looking into, they were members of this group as well, and so looking at some of the things that the students were posting up there, and that got turned into stories. Memes, I don't know if you can see there, memes, we're starting to look at that, you know, how do memes spread and go viral, and what are the messages that they're sending? Can they be used, are they reliable messages, that sort of thing as well. So, right, now I don't know if you were here in Hong Kong in March and you heard about we call it the rent-a-crowd. So, there was a suspicious WhatsApp message going around that was saying you will get paid if you want to earn some, you know, part-time money, $600 on the polling day for the CE elections. Turn up at, you know, this specific time and place, and you'll get paid $600. You just have to look like you're happy and supporting Carrie Lam. So this was going around on WhatsApp, as I mentioned, on Facebook. And it caught my students' attention. So they decided to follow up on this. The students, it arrived in a Facebook community group that was devoted to, I think it was like a dance group. And that was kind of an odd group. And so the students went to the moderator of that site and said, you know, why have you got this post here in your Facebook group? And the moderator basically said, oh look, it's just someone who's a member of our group has put this in here, so they're not actually, you know, our group doesn't necessarily endorse it, but hey, it's got everyone talking, so we're going to leave it up there anyway. So that was kind of a dead end. It wasn't that, you know, dance group. So the students kept looking, and they're thinking, what are they going to do? This is the verification timeline. So if you recall, we had the projects in the column. Once you go into a project, you then create a report, and then you start to annotate everything that you're doing. You don't need to look at the details of this, but this just gives you an idea of how the students work it out. And then I encourage the students, it's open source, so they're all a team, and I encourage them to help each other. So I had one student who got through to the WhatsApp number, called, and didn't spoke to someone, but they wouldn't talk to her because she had a mainland accent. So I said, okay, right, we've got people in our class from Hong Kong. Okay, the two of you work together. All right, and this, you know, this is where the students see we have social biases, we have, you know, prejudices. There's a lot that we deal with in the classes here, but we work together. And we work through it. So what the student did here, and I've just done a screenshot. So the student went through, basically they translate what the message is so that everyone in our class knows what's happening. So it's basically the call there. Anyone that wants to support Carrie Lam on the 26th, all welcome, you'll be given $600. If interested, reply here or at an alternate number. So the student contacted that number, messaged that number, and got a reply. Me as the student. Is there a job? And then here's the answer, and the student got the details. Okay. The students also tried to phone the number, but couldn't always get through. It went to, there was a diversion, and then the diversion was full, that sort of thing. But as far as we were concerned, this was a pretty good start. So the student then went along to the rally and observed and interviewed the participants. Didn't collect the $600 because the student thought I might get a little bit cross if they received money, and that was a fair call. So I'm pretty satisfied that yes, there was something going on. The students spoke to some of the protesters and tried to ask, who is it? Where do you get the money from? And they said to the student, it's from that guy up there. Don't you know? Don't you know? And yeah, I thought they did a pretty good job of looking online, searching online, and going and physically following up and seeing what you can find out. And they had a few ideas of some of the groups that could be behind it, but we couldn't 100% say for certain who they are. There are a few, like they use their observation skills and they look at some of the you know, badges and things that people were wearing. But we couldn't 100% say who was behind it, but we were pretty convinced that yes, there was something going on here with Rent-A-Crowd. So that was pretty good for students to do that. Okay, so what are some of the other results from semester 2? As I showed you before, so we had a number of projects. There was the election, Donald Jung, there was South Korea, we had Wildcard, just because there's so much crazy stuff that happens on the internet. I wanted something that would just incorporate any new trend that was happening. And then there's chat apps as well. So the chat apps are particularly just looking at the more closed, anything that didn't fit into this category, but was on a chat app, a closed chat app, like your WhatsApp. They are just amazing, phenomenal sources for false information to spread. And the tricky thing is, and as we heard a bit last week, it's actually really hard to measure what is going on and what the impacts are. Facebook, when it's an open group, you can start to measure it, you can see it. But with the chat apps, it's a lot harder to actually get the numbers and the statistics of what's being sent. But certainly my students tell me, and they gave me lots of examples of rumours that they would see, but also that their parents were seeing. So one of the trends that we're finding is that a lot of fake news that's going around in chat apps is actually an older generation that are sending a lot of that, because they've bypassed the computer and they've gone straight to having mobile phones. And they rely on their chat apps for security, for socialization, and it's really tricky. It's really hard to convince them if they send you a message and it says something like, these paracetamol pills are laced with a virus, and my students try to say, hey auntie, hey uncle, hey mum, hey grandma, stop sending this, it's not true, because we're learning as well. You speak to a scientist about it. I don't think a virus could actually live anyway in a cold Panadol tablet anyway for very long. And it's really hard to convince them that it's fake. Okay, so we have an issue there. We have something that we need to educate society at large with. But I think starting with the students is a good start, and they'll just sort of try to reassure their parents or their auntie or whoever's sending it around. So we're looking at a few, so I said to the students, just upload anything like that you get. So the chat apps are quite interesting. Now, of course, they're looking for suspicious sort of stuff, but over the semester, so they uploaded 31 posts or claims. There are actually more, but we had duplicates. So, and the students determined about 40% to be false in the chat apps. 30%, they verified, they said, yes, this is true, the information. However, in half the cases, it wasn't enough, it wasn't good enough. It's just a little bit of information. It's not journalistic. It's not, there needed to be a lot more fact-checking and facts added to the story. And 10% were inconclusive, and the remainder were in progress, just basically because we've got students and we have a semester that ends and exams happen and that sort of thing. So the results from the CE election, the total posts, again, taking into consideration the duplicates, we had 45. Now, not as many were determined to be false there, but again, that issue of adding facts, you can see there 53% were verified, but there wasn't enough there. We needed more information, okay? And about a quarter were inconclusive, but again, a lot of that is because we're running out of time, and sometimes it just takes time to get all of the information and put it together. All right. Now one of the other things I did that was interesting with the students, I had a case study where I got the students to do a reflection. So they had to write down, I said, I want to know all of your thoughts, everything that comes into your mind. If you see something like, remember the CNN Alive slide that I showed you, the breaking news? Okay, I said to them, I gave them an example like that. I said, I will tell you it's false. What did I do? Write down everything. What did I do to determine that that was false in 10 seconds or less? Don't just tell me that you Googled it and found out it was false. I want to know every single thought that came into your mind. I want a stream of consciousness, because we can't take for granted how journalists think, what journalists do, and I want to start to annotate this. Okay, So I gave them a case study, and I wanted a before and after. So before the course, would you send this out? Would you think it's true? Would you share it and not be worried? Okay. Would you do some verification? So in the before side of the case study, about half the class admitted they would do no verification if they were given that type of case study. And then about 60% of those admitted they would also share it, just because they thought it was interesting. So that represents a lot of the class. And then the remainder who did verify did say that they would do something before the course. Really only suggested 1 and a bit steps. Okay. And I graded the steps on a scale of 1 to 3. 1 being, oh, you know, I would think about something. 2, maybe they would do a reverse image search or Google around. And 3, they would actually do some cross-checking and fact-checking and look a bit further. So yeah, the quality was, the average grade that I gave them was pretty low, okay? Then after the course, now of course, you know, they've just studied this. Of course, they're going to do some verification work. They're clean out of the course. They're, you know, excited about it. We've had a lot of fun. But what I particularly liked when I gave them another case study was that they had an average number of verification steps 5. The case study actually that I gave them for this was when Donald Trump was just starting to talk up what he's going to do with North Korea. This was, you know, a few months ago now, okay, before it had even come to the head that it's at now. And the case study I gave them was a video. There was a siren going, and it says Pyongyang. Here is the warning, the warning that, you know, the US is going to bomb Pyongyang. Okay, and here's the warning sirens, and it's nighttime. What do you do? Verify this. It's on YouTube. And so the students did all of the steps and the things we've learnt in class, and they discovered that yes, I mean it's a real video, but does anyone know what it was? Did anyone see this video? It was I think it was 2014, it was an earthquake warning in Chile. Okay, so this is how people get on that bandwagon and they'll create some fake news about what's happening. So that was the case. So they did a lot more steps. The quality was a lot higher. Maybe I'm being a little bit too generous there, so I'm getting my RA to grade the steps as well. So yeah, so basically that's hard work because they've just done the course, and I don't expect the students to, every time they're going through everything on their feed, I don't expect them to go through all those steps, but they are now aware of it. So I want them to just stop and think about the information that they're coming into contact with and what are they going to do. And for me, the big success story is that we're stopping them sharing this fake stuff, and we're stopping them thinking, oh, it doesn't really matter. So I might just push through here for time. So we're getting some other, so these are the things that the students had to do, basically. So we had our chief executive election reports. So after they did all of this, I made them write me a story, some sort of journalistic story that showed the steps, the techniques, and, you know, the journalistic thinking and actions that they had to consider. And then another thing that we're doing are these social network immersive reports, and I'm still, well, collecting some of the results from that. But basically that's just showing the students similar type of thing. You can get a journalistic story just by looking at what's going on in social media. What are people discussing? What ideas are there? What are people blogging about? But they're not taking it far enough. They're not adding enough facts. You know, remember that 50%? Yeah, it's true, but we need to add so much more to actually make this a decent journalistic news story that has all the right angles and isn't just, you know, showing off one particular bias or a stakeholder. Okay. Now, so the final results for me, and the most pleasing thing out of all of this, is the feedback from the students, where they said that before they would look at some of the posts and they'd look at things on social media. So that first one is in relation to the US versus North Korea, and the video that was on YouTube that was actually the earthquake warning in Chile. Students said, you know, they would see things like that and actually be afraid, they would be worried. And we saw this in Occupy Central. We saw, and this was why the students set up the live verified Facebook site, because they saw that people were afraid and they wanted to give them some answers. And then, you know, I used to assume that journalists were just trying to do the right thing. They're good people and they will get all those facts for us. You know, unfortunately now the students are saying that not everyone has that attitude and approach, but then again you've got to think, well, what is actually journalism? If you're seeing blogs and what you're seeing on the internet and citizen journalism, some of it is fantastic journalism, but a lot of it might not quite go far enough. What about, you know, the people that say they are journalists but they're a little bit lazy or they're pressed for time? You know, is it enough? So got them thinking about that. The third one, I think, a lot of people say to me, and a lot of adults say to me, but does it really matter? It doesn't matter, it's just something that's funny, or, you know. But now the students have realised, well, actually, it does matter. We need to know what are the motivations behind this. It's not necessarily harmless fun. And then finally, after judging the news, not only do they debunk it, but they want to share the correction with their friend. And this is the state that we're really all trying to get at. And this is the stage that I know Google and Facebook, and certainly us as educators, we want to get the students to the point where, sounds very idealistic, but rumours will go viral, but we want the corrections to go viral as well. And that's another starting. That's future work there, you know, in how to do that effectively. But we're getting the students to that point. Okay, so we're training them to be journalists, and we're training them to, you know, have that attitude of why are they a journalist? What are they trying to impart here? What are they trying to, you know, work out and put into context for their audience? Okay, we can't just throw our hands up and say, oh, it's all on social media. We need to make sense of this. And I think that's about it. So thank you very much. Here's a few tips if you want to go home with a couple of things to do. Reverse image search, analyse the profile of the people who are posting, so basically stalk them. What else have they posted? When did they start their site? Who else do they follow? That sort of thing. And then, well, we take nearly a semester to teach students this VIA, verification, independence, accountability. But these are qualities of good journalism. So all journalists will try to verify their work. They will be independent. They won't be a stakeholder. They won't be, you know, worried about, or they'll be considering who they're interviewing as well, and they'll be very aware of what motivations are there as well. And they're accountable for their work. They stand by it, they're transparent, they'll admit when they can't get information, that sort of thing. So yeah, we take a whole semester to teach that, and that's where the news literacy comes into it that Masato, my colleague, is the expert in. So yeah, but just, you know, it's a couple of things to think about. I don't expect the students to, you know, spend half an hour on every story once they've finished the course, but you know, I am confident that they're at least thinking about things now. So that's pretty much right on time for what I wanted to say today. So I'll hand over to you for questions.
How do we expand this so that the public at large gets conversation? I mean, is it not in the secondary curriculum?
So deliver this to the public. Yeah, that's what we're wanting to do. And it's interesting, since Google and Facebook have realised for, I guess to be honest, probably for their business reasons, that they have to do something about curbing fake news, they're actually trying to support projects that build impact and that will, where we can scale out this type of education, okay, for the public. We can pretty much educate high schools, where we're getting into secondary schools with programs there. I very much think that these sorts of programs need to be mandatory. I know UNESCO, working with ministries of education around Asia, and its focus is on every country in Asia, regardless of rich, poor, resources, but this is something that should be mandatory. So we can get to that level of the students. We can do that in universities. But the real problem I find, and that we're still searching for answers, is for the older, adults. Yeah, there are answers by Google and Facebook where they're looking at algorithms, and they're looking at, there's a lot going on with, you've got fact checkers now that will put a tag on a story that's, that they will, and these are accredited fact checkers, and they'll see what's going around, what's a rumour, and so if you come across something in your news feed, that might come up with a flag that says, hey, this has been checked by the fact checkers and it's fake, that sort of stuff. So we have those algorithms, but that's kind of after the fact as well, and there's a lot happening in that space. But I think we still need, it's the software versus the hardware. We still need people to be thinking about this as well before they fall for these things, before they share, before they make a decision, and not just rely on a little tag to tell them, if this is fake or not. So lots of projects that we're hoping. This sort of open source software is being used by newsrooms more and more. Like I showed you the one in France. And there are a lot of collaborations that normally wouldn't happen. So that's a good thing as well. And I think, more and more, that's a good way of sharing reliable information, and a good way for all journalists to get together and create stories that are more reliable.
Thank you. It's fascinating talk, and what you're doing is really interesting. One of the things, I think it's a very serious subject. I work in human rights.
Great.
We're going to run a workshop for some human rights activists and journalists in Myanmar next month. One of the things they've asked us to focus on is how to counter fake news, particularly what's going on in the Rohingya at the moment, and the communal violence which is fueled by fake stories, particularly photographs and videos. So some of the tools you were talking about are very interesting in that regard. But what I'm interested in is another side of it, where people's confirmation bias make this motivated reasoning, allows them to accept something without feeling the need to verify it. So you've got different audiences, some who would want to use these tools to check, but then a whole other audience that really just wants to hear something which tells them the world is like it is. Yep. And sometimes those are siloed from other audiences who will be doing the fact checking. So even if you have a system which then debunks the story, then it doesn't get to those people. So there's not a conversation between those two groups. I wonder if you've done any thinking about addressing that, because they want to, these human rights activists want to be able to produce something. So they could use some of the tools in regards to looking at a photo which is actually from, say, the war, the civil war in Pakistan, two Pakistans at the time in the 1970s, which is being circulated as actually being Rohingya militants. They can debunk that, but can they really counter sort of that propaganda that's coming out, fake propaganda, reach those audiences and convince those who just want to confirm their biases?
And look, there are whole campaigns going on. Hello. There are whole campaigns, political campaigns. So you've mentioned the Rohingya one, which we've got a Slack group at the moment with First Draft News, and we're looking into that at the moment. So there's a lot of fact checkers around the world that are looking into that, because it's really tricky and it's really closed off and it's really hard to get in there. And we're making use of the resources of our students, because we've got students here from Myanmar, and they're in that group, and they're actually helping us, because you have to contextualize everything to the region, to that specific country. But this is a trend that we're seeing, and so you see that basically what happens online will get to offline. So you've got hate speech and you've got radicalisation, and it will develop online, and then we see that play out in real life. Because, and this is something I've looked closely with the Philippines, what happens is, I think on social media, emotions, like we all have emotions, and when we're catching up in person, that's fine, but when you put that on social media, as Maria Ressa, one of the journalists I used to work with years ago, and she now runs Rappler, she says, it's like they're on steroids. So it's like that, you know, you're talking about the confirmation bias, and people, I think people, they lose, well, there's a couple of things. At the minor end of it, I think we're all extremely easily upset on social media, and we have no tolerance, and we really have no manners, basically, okay? And that's that part of, I think, being a digital citizen that people need to learn, okay? Then you get to the extreme, like what you've described there, and I think what you need are a couple of things. Again, the education programs in the school, get in young, get into the high schools, train the trainers, so train, and we do train the trainers, so we're training other teachers and lecturers to get into the schools and do that. We can do that, and we can make the difference with that, but also I think campaigns where you've got, start to think a little bit like what journalists will do, and governments are also feeding out through chat apps as well, messages and that, so that you can get a message that can be sent out en masse to, you know, text message and that sort of thing. But who's sending that? Is the government okay? You know, it's really tricky. It's really hard. So for me, I mean, my expertise is in the education of journalists and of university students, and I can see that that has made a difference. So if there's some sort of thinking here today that you can use and apply to your setting, do let me know. But I will say, over the summer, one of the activities that I was busy with was I was a digital literacy expert for UNESCO, and they met at their headquarters, the Asia headquarters in Bangkok, and we were basically devising, you know, what are the skills, the digital literacy skills that every student, you know, should have. And it was the critical thinking as well as the ICT, the participation. It was how to protect them as well and be safe online too. And the way that we figured that we could make this mandatory across Asia and have it implemented by ministries of education was map it to the rights of the child, the Convention for the Rights of the Child. So every child has the right, actually, to access information. So we have the right to, oh, and we've got the law expert here, so you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. So, you know, to seek and to retrieve and to then impart information. They have, this is not just a privilege for rich countries, okay? So we mapped it to that. And for me, that, I thought we're starting to get somewhere. But it is frightening. And when you've got these political campaigns that are using the fake news to spread an agenda. I mean, I had a student who's from Indonesia, and I actually took her name out. I mean, she's, you know, happy to be a part of it, but I don't use her name in public because she's Chinese Indonesian, and when the Governor Ahok was in the news, she was trying to find out, she was on Twitter and she was trying to ask some politicians there, you know, what's going on, why have we made this decision? And the politicians against Ahok blocked her account. So she, you know, this is happening to students. So it's like, come on, you can't even ask a question. So, but all I can say is education and get into there for starters. So, but do let me know if you get any more, make any ground in there, because this is how serious it is. Yeah. Hey.
Thank you for your sharing. And I'm a student from Hong Kong Baptist University. and I wonder, there was a newspaper weekly, and they report some fake news about Syria's war, and because they produce their newspaper weekly, so maybe on Friday night, they report their news that Syria was attacked by an army, but actually that things didn't happen. So how to avoid this kind of stuff as a journalist?
Yeah, okay. And that's a good practical question for educating journalists. Was that information that they reported something that where did they get that information from? Was it from social media, or
no, just from on the scene of the
on the scene?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I mean, there's a couple of things. With news literacy, it does actually, we teach the students that the truth does take time to come out, okay? And sometimes you have to actually hold back rather than speculate and report until you've got the facts, until you are confident that you've put together the puzzle piece of the information. You shouldn't really be reporting things that you can't confirm. However, mistakes do happen, and there's a difference between misinformation and disinformation. Disinformation is if people are motivated to make fake news on purpose or to mislead on purpose. Sometimes misinformation can be just the result of people making an honest mistake. So what you do is, remember the VIA, you be accountable to that, and so for your next issue, you write up a big correction and say, this is actually what we've found out. Depending on what the situation is too, you can use if it's something that's online and social media, you use all those technical tools and you cross-check and you try to get the answers that, I mean, these are just general journalistic lessons. You try to get the answers that are the first-hand answers, not second or third-hand answers. Try to go to, if you're interviewing an expert, are they an expert because they happen to know about this topic, or are they an expert because they have been on the front lines and they know that? So it's those good old-fashioned journalism. Are you with Robin?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Robin.
Good. Yeah.
I took her class.
Good, good. She's very good. About the VIA process?
Yeah.
So that's part of the news literacy, and Masada will be talking about that next week. But that's just good journalism. That's what makes journalism different from a blogger, from activists. Activists do great things, but there's still other perspectives that you need to get into a story. So the verification is, like what I was just saying, get your first-hand information as much as possible. Cross-check it with, get multiple sources that corroborate each other and that aren't necessarily related to each other. So if I say, oh, the University of Hong Kong is the best university in the world, Keith says that, here's another source, my other colleagues, AJ says that. Yes, that's 3 people saying University of Hong Kong is great, but, well, we all work here. So we're not corroborating each other. So you've got to get someone independent, you've got to get the students, you've got to get research bodies and all that sort of thing. So to cross-check, and it's the same principle with every story. Independence is, I mean, I could lecture for 12 weeks on these sorts of things, but independence, we often work for different news companies that they might have an owner who is pro-Beijing or pro-independence or in between, but you have to judge a report as it stands as an individual report. Has it got, the right amount of sources? Have they verified that? Who have they interviewed? Are they interviewing the same people, or should they be looking elsewhere? And then accountability, quite often we'll see online sites that if they make a mistake, they take it down and we never see it again, all right? But that's not informing the public. If you make a mistake and if you admit a mistake, it's actually not a bad thing. It shows that you're trying to do a good job. So if major newspapers might have, say, like 50 corrections a year. That's actually a good thing, not a bad thing, because they're showing that they're fixing any mistakes. Sometimes it's just minor things as well, but they're showing that it takes time for the news. You know, there's so many cases. In Hong Kong, there was the baby snatch case where in the Kowloon Park, there was a woman who said, oh, a person with a mainland accent has kidnapped my baby. And the WhatsApp groups with Hong Kong mums were going crazy, and the Facebook groups with Hong Kong mums were going crazy. And if you look, and I was reading some of the newspaper articles about that, and I'm like, we've got no information here. There's nothing. Like, police say they're interviewing the mother. I'm thinking, well, how all of a sudden, why are we reading these articles about a mainlander has snatched a child in a Kowloon Tong park? And I'm looking at what's the actual information that the reporters got. Police interviewing the mother. There was, a CCTV camera vision that showed nothing. It just showed a stairwell and, you know, nothing. And if you trained in news literacy, you'll look at that and you'll say, there's nothing here. We've got no facts here. And then, of course, we found out a couple of weeks later that it was the mother. There was a very sad, tragic case. It was the mother who was actually the one responsible. But it's similar to your example, where if you start reporting on that straight away and you haven't got that information, sometimes it's important to know what you don't have. But that's very much the how the news literacy, and that's the type of education that I want mandatory in schools. How are we going for time? Time for one more, or I mean, if you have.
Well, thank you all for coming. We're going to have the last talk in our series next Wednesday at 1 p.m. with Dr. Masato Kajimoto, and he's going to run a sort of tutorial-like session to teach us how to spot fake news. Oh, good. Plus, you know, information about the fake news. Yes, next Wednesday, so not Tuesday. 1 p.m. here, same place.
1 p.m. different time every day.
They just got to teach. Thank you.
Thank you.